Welcome, everyone, to the Work Intelligence Loop. I'm your host, Todd Michaud. At the Work Intelligence Loop, we explore how AI and future of work technology is reshaping organizations and redefining work. Our goal is not to just talk about AI as technology, but to understand its impact on our people and on our operations and what it means for our leadership. Today's episode is going to focus on building smarter organizations with AI, knowledge, and future of work technology. And I'm pretty excited. I've been anxiously awaiting for this episode because I've got a couple of really powerful guests, Moatti from Mighty Capital, and also Renee Niemi from Mighty Capital as well. They're also leaders with Products That Count. I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I'll regroup and sort of frame today's conversation. Renee, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. I'll do full disclosure up front before you introduce yourself. I'm proud to say that Mighty Capital is an investor in my company, Hulu Automation. I guess I should disclose that, but we're proud to be affiliated with you. And so, Essie, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your amazing background.
It's so great to be here, and we're so proud that you took some of our money and to hopefully play a small part in your success. So my background, born and raised in Paris, France, electrical engineer, and then I moved to the Bay Area 20 years ago, got my MBA at Stanford, was an entrepreneur for a decade, early at Meta and also late at Nokia, which I think will be relevant for today's conversation. And then for the past 10 years, I've been a venture capitalist. Mighty Capital was started in 2018, and we are deploying right now out of our third fund. And we just celebrated our sixth IPO with Netscope.
Wonderful. Renee?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. You could call me an OG, if you will. Today, I am a partner with Mighty Capital, and I use my 30 years of experience as a product executive to help source deals and to add and work with our portfolio companies after we bring them on board. We use our product knowledge and our relationship with Products That Count, this huge network of over 600,000 product leaders, and we deliver over $1 billion of value to our portfolio like Hulu. And then I am also the resident CPO at Products That Count. I speak to up to 10 Fortune 1000 CPOs a week, from Cisco to Walmart. This lets me see the trends before anyone in the market can see them, and also clearly allows me to build trust, which allows us to work together with our portfolio. I spent my career as a product leader. You can say that I was one of the first chief product officers back in the early 2000s. I led product teams through massive transformations, mobility, software, cloud, and now I'm happy to bring that skill set to Mighty Capital.
You know, I'd love to get you guys to elaborate a little bit on this amazing organization that you build, Products That Count. You know, this is the world's largest network of product technology leaders. And I know we participate in several of the programs. It's educational, and a lot of the best minds around product strategy planning is something that gravitates to this network. So tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to build this thing. You've obviously gotten 600,000 members to join. So I guess you must be doing something very, very well. But please tell me a little bit more about that organization and maybe even how it shapes and influences your work at Mighty Capital.
Yeah, happy to share that. So the history, like the founding, if you want, of Products That Count is started 10 years ago when I was just rolling off being early at Facebook. And as a result of some successes, I was invited to write a book on what makes a great product. And that book created a movement that initially was, think of it as a small flywheel, right? Like product managers don't have a place to share best practices. This book gives them some best practices. They get together. I hosted a bunch of nerd dinners at my house. And then some of these product leaders recommended companies to invest in. When I invested in them, I then took the company and said to the product leaders, like, this is a great product. You should try it, buy it, use it. What we're doing today is essentially the same thing, just at a massive scale, because 600,000 product measures, that's 1 in 3 product measures in the world, cross industry, cross geography. So the engagement is no longer dinners at my house. It's a dozen different programs, podcasts, webinar, awards, programs for executives, which Renee has been, leading and setting up, taking the organization to a whole different level. But the flywheel itself of we source incredible deals from this product ecosystem. We help our companies sell into this product ecosystem is the same. And then the piece that got added more recently is that the chief product officers that Renee is engaging, they're also buying companies. And so in addition to the 6 IPOs that I mentioned, we've had also 6 strategic M&As. Most of them are initiated by introductions to the chief
That's
product
interesting.
officers in that network.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually an interesting twist. So were you expecting that, or was that sort of a sidelight that just happened organically?
Yeah, I can take that one, Essie. So the answer is yes. For a long while, the role of the chief product officer has been evolving from away from simply tech and defining the next generation of product,
Yeah.
vision, to being really a business transformation catalyst.
Yeah.
And in the age of AI, that whole concept of business transformation, I mean, let's just call it, I was in the middle of when hardware went to software, when, PC software went to mobile. And then when all of that went to the cloud, those were big transformations. Those were nothing compared to what they are going through with AI. And they just simply can't keep up
Yeah.
with normal activity. And so in order for the CPO to, stave off, competitive threats and to continue to grow at the expectations, M&A is just a natural tool in the
Yeah.
toolbox. Yeah.
It's interesting. So I think you guys are well aware that our audience are made up of predominantly financial services executives, banks, credit unions, CEO, CFO, CTO, CPO leaders, or commerce businesses, retailers, wholesalers, brands, and that comprises our audience. It is interesting because you're talking about the same old isn't working anymore, is it? The way that product officers need to think about AI innovation and other interesting emergent technology has sort of changed. Talk a little bit about how that mindset, and by the way, you can cover this from an investor's perspective because you get to see things first, long before enterprises get to see technology. You see it first as a venture investor, or of course, so you've got that products that count lens as well. I'd love to hear your take on this mad, crazy world that we now find ourselves in with AI and other future of work technology really disrupting the landscape.
You know, I can give a CPO perspective and maybe you could jump in with the investor perspective, Essie. I will say that this is a moment for chief product officers. It's been the moment that they've been waiting for, and frankly, if they don't grab it, and you see, definitely seeing an entire range of CPOs from good ones that are using AI to, become more efficient or to write that PRD, but the ones that are really going to catapult their careers, their companies, and become the next generation of financial service company are the ones that are rethinking their business. They're completely reforming it. And I think it's probably worth making this point, Todd, because we have this concept. So we run research once a year at Products Account. We've been tracking the CPO and their impact to business for 5 years now. And We saw a material uptake on the impact last year, and specifically the impact to the work of the best CPOs in the world to investor returns.
Yeah.
And we've kind of categorized that as the CPO alpha effect.
Yeah.
Broader product alpha effect, but the
Yeah.
CPO alpha effect. And what that says is CPOs doing great work, and we see it happening, can have a material return on a company's investor value.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about customer value. It is about customer value too. But if you do it right, it takes your business and adds value all the way down to the investor level.
That's awesome. Essie, how about the investor view?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what's happening right now with the CPOs from an investor perspective. Companies in the past have been buying essentially like PE buyout type of companies. Larger companies, essentially they buy EBITDA so that they can increase their stock price, because more EBITDA means more, like, times the PE ratio means bigger stock price. But what's happening right now is nobody buys EBITDA anymore, because the companies that are generating EBITDA, they're old school. They are not AI native, and they're essentially going to go out of business in the next, whatever, 1, 2, 3 years. It's only a matter of time. So when we talk to the CPOs in our network, and we're talking Salesforce, Johnson and Johnson, Walmart, Disney, we're talking Cognizant, Anthem, we're talking like real Fortune 1000. They're essentially saying, I don't want old technology. In fact, my entire technology stack is going to be disrupted by some random startup. I don't even know where it's going to come from. But if I don't act right now, I'm going to be, threatened the way that I saw Nokia threatened like 10 something years ago, where after 2 years, literally, they exited a business that they had 40% market share of. Like Nokia was the Samsung of its time. So that's sort of how big that lens is, which means, from an investor perspective, we are backing companies like Hulu, who are AI native, who are helping their clients become AI native, because for those clients, time is of the essence. They've put their kind of traditional growth methodology on hold, no longer buying EBITDA, but rather working with people like you, which is why you've seen such massive growth in your revenue, like total spike. And, in particular at Hulu, you work on some of the core kind of mission critical processes. So there's no room for error, but there's also no room for like status quo.
Yeah.
Because if you think about what the big, banks, I mean, it's cross industry, but in your case, it's bank and retailers, what they're doing, if they become AI native fast enough, they can execute 10, 30 times faster at scale than any of their competitors. So they're going to leave them in the dust. And if you don't catch up across industry, you're losing.
I
Yeah,
love that. Go ahead, Renee, after you.
I also think it might be worth giving the financial services lens to you, because in particular, the financial services product leaders are at this passroads, right? Because they have risk on one side and they have an entire industry being disrupted. And so what I'm really seeing is a complete embrace of how do you go and first and foremost completely make me competitive from a time perspective. And then I'm using that extra time and resource to leapfrog and figure out the risk equation and all of those other things that impact uh, longer term customer value for me. But they're completely rethinking and how they evaluate risk, how they incorporate AI within a trust envelope. It is very much front and center, and frankly, that industry is likely to be disrupted the most if they don't actually embrace AI.
This is exactly where I was going to go a moment ago. So, as you can imagine, when we first started the company, we were educating people on what is AI? Is it something that you should consider? Now, everybody, it comes up at every conference, every discussion, but there are adopters and resistors. And so now we're finding ourselves trying to coach executives in the financial services industry or in the commerce industries about the need for speed, the need for courage, the need to move ahead. And we serve very conservative organizations. And what's been interesting to me is so, on the one hand, I'm very pleased to see that the education isn't quite so necessary. But the way that these organizations are thinking about this new emergent technology, still may be a little bit old school. I need a plan to plan the plan before we do anything. And so I'd love it since we are talking to generally second tier, third tier organizations. That's who we serve. We serve not the largest in the industry, but those that might compete with them. They've got the advantage of agility, right? Smaller organizations can be more decisive, but I just would love to have a little bit more context on what you guys are seeing for these organizations. Who are thinking long-term strategic. Bankers are amazing at thinking about 5-year plans, but what about the 5-month plan? So comment a little bit about the urgency that you all are seeing, around this landscape.
Here's what's happening. There's right to say there's a massive amount of resistance. In fact, most of the large companies are stuck between a rock and a hard place. The CEO is like, AIify my operations today. The chief product officer in general is looking at their team saying, how am I going to do that? Everybody's resisting. Like every single person, especially white collar in the organization, is like, oh, I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're trying to train their team to become, better at using AI, which is that education piece that you're talking about. And that's nice and all, but it's way too slow. And so what's happening in the meantime, while everybody is resisting internally, is some startups are getting to many millions of dollars in revenue within a few months, as you have had. And they're like very quickly threatening core business. And that's what drives today 1 in 3 of the chief product officer we're talking to taking over the M&A agenda, which it's hilarious. Like it's traditionally been in like with the CFO. Now, when you look at who the winners are for AI in the C-suite, obviously it's not finance. Finance is not meant to be like a forward-looking function. It's definitely not marketing because they're kind of behind on the technology side. It's definitely not engineering because engineering is actually one of the organizations that's going to get cut with AI. It's product. And so to have an ally that's a product executive in the organization, that's how you get, as a CEO, that's how you get real AI adoption. And so what Renee is describing, right, the CPO, Chief Product Officer, becoming essentially the number 2 president, maybe sometimes very often the number 1, that's how you succeed as an organization. It's like you have to do aggressive partnership with people like you through the product organization to really transfer your business fast enough that you don't get essentially obsolete.
Yeah, it's interesting. They say that 20% of our banks in the US alone are going to be merged with consolidated. And so if you look at an industry that's got 4,500 banks, 20% will be ultimately consumed or combined with. And so that resonates, I think, with some of our audience members. And of course, we see that on the commerce side of our business as well. Scale matters, but speed matters.
I want to add one thing to this, Todd, which is speed is super important. And it's 2 kinds of speed. One is the speed of like getting started. Like if you haven't already started, you're really late. But then the speed is like the continuous innovation, right? Like it's a flywheel. So you get started with some small things, people start to see the improvement. They can spend more time in like more value add stuff. And then they come up with ideas on how to do more interesting stuff. Like you attract bees with honey. And as you do more and more of that, you can go faster and faster.
Yeah.
And so if you don't start, you're already late. But if you don't keep going and do more optimization, more workflow, you're going to be late as well.
Yeah. Let me give you a question that I think will be right up both of your alley. So, what does AI and some of this new technology mean for software companies? Of course, so much of what you do is invest in software innovators. I'd love to hear your perspective on, maybe selfishly companies like Hulu, but what does it mean to the software industry at large?
I'll give my perspective on this. I don't look at it through that lens. I look at it through a lens of, what does this mean for business at large, regardless on how you deliver your business value proposition. We're at a time of rethink and reinvention, and that touches how you do things, your internal process and the speed in which you do it. Um, the types of resources you need will change. The type of resources you hire will change, or the skill sets need to augment. It's less about repetitive tasks. It's more about greenfield thinking. You need people willing to grow, because we're at the tip of the iceberg. There's much more that we don't know than what we know at this stage in this
Mhm.
world.
Yeah,
And so there's kind of the people and the how you do things. And then there's the external viewpoint in terms of your products and services. And your products and services will get disrupted.
yeah,
And so the question is, are you keeping an eye out for how it's going to get disrupted? Because if you're looking down your traditional lines, AKA, small competitors, large competitors, you're going to miss it.
yeah,
And so, how, as a business, are you keeping an eye out for that? And then when you combine that, rethinking your products, what can be, and the speed in which they can be, and then keeping that reserve to making sure you keep opportunities from the side. So let me give you an example, because that sounds super
sure,
theoretical. And I'm going to give you an example in the media business, but it easily can be applied to the financial services
yeah,
business. So today you have an incumbent media conglomerate, and I would even put Netflix in there. Once upon a time, they were the disruptor. Now they're one of the conglomerate, right? And they have an ecosystem that feeds itself between their actors, their lawyers, their rights. Like that's a very well established, highly valuable, really a problem for them if they disrupt it.
yeah,
And then you've got a bunch of players on the side, and just pick your player. It can be anybody. Like it could be, um, uh, one of these up and coming, media startups,
yeah,
right? Well, they do not have that ecosystem to worry.
yeah.
But what they do have now is they can actually create highly engaging, highly meaningful, like content, original content with fake actors, with fake music, like the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And they don't care, right?
Yes.
And these middle guys are going to be completely disrupted by them. They don't see it coming.
Yep.
Or if they see it coming, they're like, oh no, 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 no. We're gonna fight it. We're gonna throw a bunch of lawyers at it and say, oh, you're copying so and so's
Yeah.
actor's voice, and I'm gonna sue you. That doesn't scale, right? And so they're gonna wake up one day and realize there was an entire shift. So the question is, in the financial services industry, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And if you're not embracing, this shift, what's going to come at you sideways? And are you going to be prepared? Are you running fast enough? Do you have the right people in place? Are you using the right tools?
Resonates a lot because if you think about banks and credit unions for so long, they thought each other was the adversary. And it's true, they compete with each other, but now we have these AI powered fintech companies that are competing for loans, competing for deposits, competing for other products. And so the adversary of the past may not be the adversary of the future. We see the same thing in the commerce side where Do I have branches? Do I have stores, or do I have the delivery or fulfillment of experience? And so I think that really resonates with the audience. We have to think about these new entrants as the adversaries of the future, or potentially the partners of the future too. Some of them are adopting collaborations with these young innovators to try to differentiate themselves. I assure you that these young innovators don't have 20 branches spread across a geography that nobody's visiting anymore, do they?
They don't have that legacy holding them down,
Yeah.
right? But the key thing is you got to have that growth mindset. You got to be watching for it, and you've got to be set up with the agenda
Yes.
and the systems to be able to react to it.
Essie, you a few moments ago were talking about the role of the CPO being the chief lieutenant now to the CEO. Let's talk a little bit more about beyond that. What does organizational design look like? How are we having to think about new roles? Whether I'm a business person that's been with an organization for a long time and it's a skills transformation, or how organizations think about the allocation of human capital. Any thoughts on where you see it going?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's exactly what you and Renee were talking about, where there's a balance between like doing less, like getting rid of the legacy code and then getting rid of like the software engineers. Like I don't think software is going anywhere.
Right.
There's a kind of a fine balance between that kind of technology debt
Yep.
and the human element. Like,
Yes.
the aspect of having humans in the loop, having a business understanding of
Yeah.
what the customers need, like building a car, not faster horses, essentially. What we're seeing is the organizations are evolving towards more of what we call product builders instead of product managers.
Yeah.
So, in other words, what's changing is inside financial services organizations, retailers, and across industry, the chief product officer is responsible for understanding the business aspects, understanding the customer requirements, and then leveraging technology to deliver essentially delight. So that means that for most organizations, they're evolving their IT to become their product organization. And they're calling their product managers product builder and
Mhm.
expecting them to capture customer needs, to keep in mind, company KPI, and to be able to code themselves using a bunch of AI assistants that we all read about in the press.
Yeah. That's definitely something that's really transforming. Is now where I used to have to do this on my own, the interesting work and the not so interesting work, getting our digital helpers, to sort of come along the way. And it's scary a little bit. We sort of really put a concentrated focus on people businesses, given the nature of who we serve, and building trust and confidence within these essential workers that are managing important relationships for our customers with their customers. That, hey, how can I ultimately have more time to do the stuff that's really valuable as opposed to wasting my time on tedious work just because I'm a little bit fearful. And we've kind of resorted to, calling our agents cute little fuzzy names, maybe even letting the end user name them, right? To sort of create an adoptive, nature to it. And that helps a little bit. But, I think nobody wants to do the BS work anymore. They want to delegate it to their digital helper if they have one. And if they don't have one, they need one. And if they're afraid of them, they're essentially subjecting themselves for work that's going away.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great point. I want to add a couple of things that we see to that. I'm curious your perspective as well. One is there's like a key distinction in what you're building. Are you building an agent, which is essentially like an AI user of a product that
Mhm.
has new set of needs because it's not human? Or are you building an assistant, which is essentially helping a human do a better job?
Right.
In which case, you have two users. You have the
Yeah.
human user,
Hmm.
which still needs hand holding, and
Yeah.
you have the assistant who's sort of an AI user, but who's kind of helping the human. And so, what I think is happening is some of the dirty work, like data entry, is being delegated to agents,
Yep.
which is a great thing. But some of the more value add work is being augmented with assistance.
Yes.
And that's where, an approach that's hybrid, like Hulu has, and frankly, like every successful AI organization has, like C3 AI,
Yep.
Palantir, that's exactly their model. It's sort of a, you know, human in the loop, accelerated by AI, but not just a technology play.
That's
It's
right.
very much, kind of a companionship almost.
Yeah, and I love that because that resonates with leaders of our customers ultimately. They're not looking to get rid of their people. They're just looking to have their people do more valuable, impactful work to serve their customers. And so, it's interesting when we started our journey, it was all about what can we automate? What can we take? But, more and more, what I guess I've learned with our own journey is it's not just about automation, it's about transforming work. Yes, with agents. Yes, with automation. Yes, with content processing, and yes, with human activities that are governed. And so, how do we make our human workers a lot more efficient by even giving them what I'd call Google like turn by turn instructions along the way, all in this multi mode orchestration? So, that's what we see. And this serves as a perfect bridge for, I think, organizations that have got legacy technology that's been around for a decade or two. Consequently, maybe their processes are that old as well. And so how do we transform that without necessitating a rip and replace on something that's been there for 20 years, right? Yet still yield the advantage. And so my big learning over the last couple of years is that the market doesn't need one trick ponies. It's not just about agents. It's about a multi-mode, thoughtful experience where we bring the best worker for the unit of work, right? And that's essentially what you're saying. And that by the way lands really well if you're a bank executive, a credit union executive, and you realize that your customers have an expectation for a relationship more than not. But I love that point that you make. I see the same thing that you do.
Want to add that supports the point that both of you just made. There is and I think the perfect word for this is judgment. There
Mhm.
is a need
Yeah.
for people because agents, whether they're assistant or replacing, they're really good for repetitive tasks at this phase. They're not as good for judgment.
Yeah.
And in addition to relationships and the people interaction, you also need a judgment layer, and that doesn't
Yes.
go away. And I will say that we all could use assistance, right? There are like the more we can have our non-value add
Yeah.
effort put aside, it gives us more think time.
Yeah.
It allows us to be smarter, and it just actually accelerates the value that we bring to the table as humans. Let the machines do
And,
non-value
after
work.
all, most humans are time starved right now. They're having a hard time with work home life balance. They're stressed. And so, all the more reason to go into the frontier openly. I've got a few questions. We've got a few moments here, and I'll hit you with quick questions and then we'll do quick answers. So, I want to just hear from both of you since you're really close with the venture signal. What's hot? What's interesting? What's upcoming? What do you see that gets you guys excited as investors? Any particular technology or innovation super exciting to you?
I can help with that. You know, Mighty Capital is not a thesis driven investor. What we do is we constantly listen to the 600,000 product manager that we engage through products account. And we ask them, like, what are some interesting companies? That's how Hulu got on our radar. Every year we get about 10,000 nominations. Like, these are all interesting. And then every day, and we use AI to do that extensively, every day we do a micro thesis where we come up with like 40, 50 companies, like, oh, there's a cluster of interesting companies that is doing something, you know, relevant. And then we look at which of the 50 is the best performing from an investment perspective. And so what we're seeing right now, there's a few things that look like there's a real competitive advantage. One is industry expertise, like someone like you who is going deep in a sector where they have like a very specific expertise. They relate to the clients in a way that very few people can do, and then they augment their capabilities with AI. That's a very relevant, very viable business, and we love that. The second is like data moat, like a company that's collecting a lot of proprietary data and then exploiting that to create new revenue streams.
Yeah.
That's super relevant. There's a lot of opportunities also if you go a little further down the stack. And we were very early investors in Grok, and that was like a very good outcome.
Yeah, you guys are looking really wonderful on that one, aren't you?
We did some we had 60x on our first check, which is
Oh,
really nice for our
right.
investors. More importantly, they're going into the stack and saying like it has specific requirements when it comes to performance, and so we're able to invest in that kind of companies. We actually just invested in spin-offs from Grok on the infra layer, in spin-offs from Palantir, talking about the business model that Voodoo has, and in also spin-offs from OpenAI. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of different things that are happening right now. The one thing that isn't working as well is the traditional horizontal SaaS approach. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to find a beachhead, and then when I have a beachhead, I'm going to go horizontal. We
Yeah.
think right now it's better to go vertical, like you are.
By the way, I totally agree that we've tried a little experimentation to do this and do that, and there's just a lot more value that gets delivered when you go deep versus going wide. And when you speak the language, understand the pain points versus generic solutions. And so that's been exactly the experience that we have. I hope that continues, obviously. Of course, that means that you're picking markets that are big, beautiful markets. And fortunately, we have the privilege of serving, a big addressable market at this point that needs industry specific solutions because it's regulated, because of the expectations on it. So I like that. Renee, any comments on that you have?
Now, I actually think SC covered it well. If there were two kind of macro trends that we're watching, one is that trust layer, and it's more of an infrastructure down at the infrastructure level. Like trust is going to be the next big phase that's going to enable the next wave of adoption. And so we're watching the security and trust layer very closely.
Yeah.
We also think there's a big play in physical AI.
Yeah.
And what are going to be the enablers in that whole physical layer?
Yes.
But those are the other two trends I would just throw in.
That's very interesting. I agree with that. Okay, so let's kind of look ahead. So we'll do a look ahead question, and I'll give you a couple of lightning round questions before we wrap up today. So let's look ahead 5 years. This is your chance to be a predictor. What do you see looking ahead? That's a wide open question, by the way. I didn't make it narrow on purpose, just in case you wanted to take it in any particular direction.
I can speak to that. First of all, we strongly believe that product is going to be the dominant function in business. We believe that most CEOs will come from a product background by 2030. AI is going to deliver on its promises. Maybe in the short term, there'll be some backlash, but by 2030, definitely, people talk about like $10 trillion. I think that's an understatement. So, there's a lot of opportunity out there. One trend that people don't talk about enough that I think is going to have a real impact is demographics. There's a clear population decline, which is going to hit China, already hitting China. So they're going to be strong in robotics. But in terms of economic wealth and innovation, I think there's going to be some challenges there. And so that's something that maybe we don't anticipate as much.
What about that in North America, or the U.S. specifically? Do you see a similar phenomena happening here?
Yeah, so the trend in the US is sort of interesting, and I think it will revert in a few years with the next election cycle. There's the same trend of like declining demographics, and economic growth is directly linked to demographic growth. Now, the rate of birth is declining in the US, and the way you course correct is with three things. One, people work longer, like longevity, like
Right.
working in later age. 2 more women go to work, and 3 more immigrants. And right now, when you look at what we're doing in the States with the current agenda, we're going kind of in the other direction. So I think there's going to be a shift comes the next election cycle that is going to get us back on track for population growth and economic growth.
I didn't hear have more babies. I thought that would be one of the options.
Actually, the baby bonuses do not work when you look at the
Okay.
numbers.
I
was
just was
waiting for
expecting
that
that. I
one
didn't
too.
hear it. Renee, what's your what's your prediction?
I'm going to give you a very product specific lens. I think in 5 years, we're not going to be talking about AI anymore. AI just will be. It's not a thing. It's in existence, and we will have found our new normal by far in maybe even three years, but certainly in the 5 years. I do think there will be a shift in roles, but a whole new set of roles created in this new world era, and we will have settled. And most important, our education systems will have caught up to it. One of the biggest challenges right now is the new skills coming out of our education system are not prepared for the future. So I think those are the big things.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Okay, couple of lightning round questions. One AI belief you've changed your mind about.
I'll go first. When AI first came out, I thought it was a whole new interface, a whole new way of working, and that completely changed my perspective. It's not about the user interface, it's really about the business and the cultural enablement, that just shifting the way you think, not the way you do.
Yeah, wonderful. Essie?
I thought that LLMs would all essentially be commoditized and all the same. And I think that's absolutely not the case. They all have very, very distinct competencies and personalities.
Yeah, that's interesting insight. I agree with that. Okay, one leadership behavior that becomes essential in the AI era, the current era, that maybe wasn't quite so important before.
I'll go with growth mindset. You got to be flexible. You've got to constantly be learning, and
Yeah.
you've got to be able to lead that way.
Essie, what about
That's
you?
a great one. Yeah, I think I can live with that one as well.
And I'll give one, not that I'm supposed to be interviewing, but courage. Courage is an important skill to have the willingness to kind of take the plunge. Okay, last question.
Wait. If you were to give me a second one, it would be judgment.
Yeah, I would. That's right. But courage is first in my view because, you know,
Courage,
yeah,
judgment.
we were talking earlier about it. Sometimes day to day, we don't see the change around us. And, we need to walk the talk about adopting some of this stuff faster. So I'm just echoing your points about what leaders require. Okay, last one. AI is most powerful when it helps humans.
You go first, Essie.
AI is most helpful and powerful when it helps humans relate to one another more often and more effectively.
I like that. That's a good one.
Ooh,
Renee?
I have that one. I have so many. I have to pick one. It was really hard. But if I had to pick one, I would just go with AI is more powerful when it helps humans make better decisions.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, guys, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this conversation. You're both brilliant. You both have excellent purview into where technology is going and where businesses are evolving with your product expertise. And every time I interact with you, I learn a lot more. So thank you for spending some time with me.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us. Take
it
care.
was a lot of fun. Bye.